Hello, what's going on to the YouTube family? This is going to be part two, talking about, and it's going to be a little bit more, but the evil of Fredrick Goodwin. Fredrick Goodwin, and I'm going to show a couple pictures of him. Fredrick Goodwin is he was the head of the national, the NIMA, National Institute of Mental Health. National Institute of Mental Health. That's Fredrick Goodwin. That's him right there. And in this particular podcast, I'm going to go over some real specific things, and then I'm going to get out of here. I'll try to make these things pretty quick because I'm not here to get all crazy and go nuts. But this is a report done by this guy, Peter Breggin, and he wrote a book, the medical. Basically, it's a medical. He was like a whistleblower, and here's his biomedical report. This was done in 1992 by Peter Breggin, and I did read some of this last week. I'm going to read some more of this, and I'm pretty much highlighting some of the main parts that I wanted to get on. So right here, we're dealing with the current wide-scale drugging of children. And keep in mind, back in 1992, you had a big thing with a lot of violence in hip hop. Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre had just pretty much came out with the Chronic and Dog, then Snoop's album, Dog Pound. And, we had NWA, and so big gangster music was big. People were seeing firsthand a lot of violence on their TV screens and in their media of black youth. And so this was a real big subject at that time, and still is a big subject. And we'll go into a little bit of the history because we'll see that this has been a big problem on the minds of white intelligentsia for a long time. And one of the things about black folks is if we can see a problem, then we can defeat a problem. But if we don't see a problem, it's hard for us to be energetic against that problem. And I'm going to take, for example, the Tuskegee experiment. Black people, we got fooled into many different experiments, but the Tuskegee experiment, it just showed how trusting we were. These people were being infected with syphilis. They were being infected with syphilis. And that syphilis was being given to them by people that they trusted. I don't know why, because they had just been up from slavery and they was in the height of Jim Crow. But people, black folks, we trusted white folks. And we lined up and they injected us with syphilis, and it created some of the most horrible history that we know of. And that we had militated against. And by the time we found out that people were being killed by this syphilis, it was pretty much too late. And I think that happened for over 40 years. And it was just recently found out, I think in 1972, about the Tuskegee experiment. But there are many other experiments that have been going on and are going on in the midst of that. And as this was saying before, because of the riots, right in the wake of the riots, let me see if I can get to that. basically in the wake of the riots in 1960s, it had the uh, the problem of the young black male on America. And it wasn't just the young black male, but it was black society, the growing, the growth of black society in the minds of the leaders of this nation was getting bigger. They had Malcolm X talking, and they were dealing with, they had just to, from their perspective, dodged a bullet, having to negotiate with Martin Luther King and having had Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam come up. So they had been, and then all the riots and the discord, they were running out of money. They were not able to respond to all of that. You got to realize it takes money to put millions of people in martial law. That's not easy. And black people, we see that this society is able to contain us for periods of time, but it's not easy to contain us as a group like that. And so this was part of that program. This was an intense program to contain black people. So last time I think I left off on Operation Weed and Seed. So it says Operation Weed and Seed is the official name of an ongoing Justice Department program that parallels the proposed violence initiative. This is back in 1992. And keeping, like I said, Operation Weed and Seed, 1992, right after the Chronic. So marijuana was being promoted in our communities. Drugs, it was a gateway drugs because back then, it was not it was not manly. It was not a big push for uh, black people to be takers of drugs. We were sellers of drugs, you know. So, that weed and seed, I don't wonder what kind of seeds they're talking about planting. They've selected areas of the inner city where black people live in order to arrest large numbers of criminals, especially those involved in the sale of drugs. It then proposes to introduce new psychosocial programs, including business expansion, but most of the funding is devoted to the weeding part of the program. Meanwhile, vast numbers of young black men are already being processed and weeded out through the criminal justice system. For example, for example, in a typical city such as Baltimore, 56% of the black men ages 18 to 35 are involved in the criminal justice system on any given day. And so nowhere else, nowhere else in the world, including the old USSR and South Africa, is such a large percentage of people subjugated by a criminal justice system. And so basically over half of young black men from 18 to 35, which is some of your most productive, physically productive years of your life, you're involved in the criminal justice system. So that means you're either in jail or in prison or on parole. And so let's move on here. The violence initiative ultimately puts children of all races in jeopardy. America's children are already subjected to massive psychiatric interventions, with more than 1 million children, mostly boys, taking basically Ritalin, methylphenidate, and tens of thousands being hospitalized. Despite widespread recognition that both the family and the schools are failing to meet the basic needs of children and youth, these societal problems are rejected in favor of subjecting young people to psychiatric diagnosis, drugs, and hospitalization. If the violence people, if the violence people, if the violence initiative is fully implemented, America's children will come under increased psychiatric pressure. Now we see today, this was in 92, today, what is the biggest plague that's going on? The opioid crisis, right? So while they were trying to weed and seed Black America in 1992, they were weeding and seeding us. And this is 2019, well, almost 2020. So that was 28 years ago. These people that's 28, 30, all of that, 28, 30, 34, 40, they all on opioids. And so this man's prediction was very true. All these psychotropic drugs. So while the initial focus of the violence initiative is on inner city children, which is 25% of the American children, most of them are white, live in poverty. If the violence initiative is allowed to proceed, it will eventually extend to other poverty-ridden populations. And he was absolutely correct. And such as Native American reservations and poor white communities. The National Academy of Sciences report advises extending its biomedical intervention program to all children in a geographic area in order to broaden political support and to avoid stigmatizing high-risk children. So they knew that as soon as they start trying to go, well, some of them, which is the whistleblowers, which is Peter Breggin, he knew that as soon as you start trying to biomedically cure, in quotes, biomedically cure violence in Black youth, instead of just giving Black people the resources that we asked for and wanted, and giving those resources under our control, and stop trying to destroy us and trick us and starve us out. Black people for decades simply wanted schools. We wanted schools, and we wanted our schools to be taught correctly. We wanted resources for our schools, resources for our business professionals to start businesses in their areas, all the social programs such as the music, the after school programs and the clubs. We wanted just the resources to create safe environments for our children and our people. But those resources were systematically taken away from our cities. And there you go. And so this is, this is where we're moving to. So here's an earlier federal violence initiative. So in the wake of the Black urban uprisings in the late 1960s, America became preoccupied with the threatening figure of the young Black male, as well as with the overall danger of rebellion and social chaos, led by the National Institute of Mental Health and the Justice Department. You see, so you crazy, and they gonna put you in jail. That was the whole thing. They want you in jail because you crazy. And that's where Joe Biden came in. And, that's where we get in that's where the crime bill came from. The super predator issue. Yeah. And remember, he said he didn't care about, if you listen to this speech, which we'll probably play at some point, if you listen to that speech, Joe Biden talked about he didn't care about why people were poor and why, he didn't care about none of that. His whole thing was they need to go to jail. Don't attack my mom. Don't attack my sons. Don't challenge my sons. And all of the stupid stuff Joe Biden is saying right now, and people wanting to vote for him for a presidency, you're stupid. To me, you're insane. There's no reason to even, if you can't get somebody in there that's going to promote your agenda. And our agenda right now is reparations. We want control of the money so we can decide what to do with our money. And, that's the only reason why I would vote. I would vote Marianne Williamson, even though she's pretty much very far back from the nomination because they've boxed her out of the media attention. But yeah, you got all these different people trying to run right now. Michael Bloomberg, who did the stop and frisk. You got, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, this nut, Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, these people, it's no need for black people to participate if you're not going to get your agenda promoted. You might as well just go ahead and work on your business. You work on your business development and your organizational development. So we're moving on. It too. So basically, after these riots, they decided to go ahead and drug black people up and throw them in jail. So let's see here. So it too. So this violence initiative, this first violence initiative, was inspired by fear of violence in the inner city, which is black people. So they were inspired by fear of the inner city black males. 3 Harvard professors, neurosurgeons, Vernon Mark, and I have him here. Hold on a second. That's Vernon Mark. So 3 Harvard professors, these are Harvard professors, Vernon Mark and William Sweet, this guy. And they had Frank Irvin, but I couldn't find a picture of him, so you'll have to find that yourself. Yeah. So those 3 Harvard professors, these people, they were, and Frank Irwin is a psychiatrist, but the Vernon Mark and William Sweet were neurosurgeons. And these people were leaders in the 70s violence initiative. They made the startling proposal that psychosurgery, so what they wanted to do was brain mutilation by means of electrodes could be used to control not only urban rioters, but some black leaders who allegedly suffer from brain damage. So basically, they wanted to put the problem in medical terms. They wanted to stick brain electrodes in people, come up with some excuse that you were medically, compromised. That's the reason why he was so violent. Get you to agree to let brain electrodes get stuck in your head. And see, they put the box on the back of your head. They stick those electrodes and it goes into the amygdala, which is a portion of the brain that deals with they have associated with violence. So their psychosurgery research project, which only operated on white patients, was jointly funded by the NIMA and the law enforcement. See, they always need the police. The Law Enforcement Assistance Administration. And the grant also supported their genetic research in prison containing a predominantly black population. So they were researching, they were using prisons as their guinea pigs. They were using those prisoners as their guinea pigs. And in addition to acting alone, a neurosurgeon at the University of Mississippi, O.J. Andy, was performing neurosurgery on hyperactive and aggressive black children as young as 5 years in a segregated institution for people with learning disabilities. So basically, they were experimenting on us all this time, and they continue to do that today, I'm sure. So we'll move down to the lessons on Nazi Germany. So Hitler's first legislation was aimed at the sterilization of a variety of individuals diagnosed as mentally ill. Eventually, a scientifically and bureaucratically organized program exterminated most of Germany's mental patients before the Holocaust began, which I disagree. That was part of the Holocaust, but they don't consider those people. The United States is not only on the verge of becoming a totalitarian mental hygiene state similar to Nazi Germany. Excuse me, the United States is not on the verge of becoming a totalitarian mental hygiene state similar to Nazi Germany, nor is the Violence Initiative program as extreme as proposals developed in Nazi Germany. Well, it is. It just, at that time, it was not understood just how extreme, but this is extreme enough. But there are significant and threatening parallels in the proposed model for a state-controlled biomedical intervention into social problems with focus on feared and rejected racial minority. While the Violence Initiative would not in the foreseeable future lead to mass sterilization or euthanasia, it would surely lead to a vast encroachments on individual freedom. Well, they're pretty much close to that right now, because in Alabama, they just proposed to, um, if they accuse you of rape, which we know that they accuse people of rape all the time, if they accuse you of rape, they have the right to castrate you, they chemically castrate you now, and that's in Alabama and Tennessee today. So he was wrong on this. It did lead to widespread sterilizations and euthanasia. Okay, let's go down to this. So the Violence Initiative expressed a number of principles that are common to biomedical programs of social control, including the American Violence Initiatives in Nazi Germany. Okay. The society is faced with economic hardships and some degree of social disintegration that inflames anxiety that the society must contain a minority population that can easily be identified, blamed, and subjugated to special treatment. So this is a principle. This is a common issue that I guess Nazi Germany and the Violence Initiative in America has. So they got a population that's easily identifiable and can be blamed, okay, for the disintegration of society. And so they want to treat this. So Goodwin, Fredrick Goodwin, this guy, Fredrick Goodwin. Goodwin made references to economic needs, to the need for financially feasible programs, and the loss of structure in society. He repeatedly focused uh, his discussions on violence on high impact inner city youth, that is, black people. The National Academy of Sciences report has similar emphasis. All right, and we're almost done with this. So I want y'all to get this report, and I think I'm going to be done with this because I'm not going to read the whole thing. But you can get this report. This is a biomedical program for urban violence and control in the U.S. The dangers of psychiatric social control. So the main point of this is they subjected our whole community to, let's see, to believing that drugs, let me see here, I want to do this one. Yeah, they wanted to just solve all the drug programs, solve all the social programs using drugs. And they actually thought they would be able to do that. See, while Goodwin does not discuss drug interventions, he emphasizes serotonergic biochemical imbalances in the brain as biochemical markers. So this is how they're deciding who they're going to, you know, inject and try to chemically lobotomize, because they knew they couldn't put those electrodes in everybody's brain because nobody would go for that. So what they did is they found drugs that would accomplish the same issue. Dr. Wesley goes over it good. Get this book. I want y'all to, he goes over this in much more detail. This is just a part of what he had already put on. And that's just part of what they're doing. Here's another guy, Jose Delgado. They treated the black people like they actually, when they call you monkeys, they really believe that. And so they call them concrete jungles as well. Our cities, the places where we lived. And they're giving tribute to Jose Delgado. This guy here, he put installed brain electrodes to. He wanted to, you know, control all behavior of people using those brain electrodes in transistors. And these are considered legitimate scientists. They're not, kooks. They're not considered, insane people. These people were given money. They were given budgets, and so that's the history there. All right, y'all. That's pretty much it for this one. And I'm ending this live stream. Go ahead and research that. Super Mike out.